Welcome back to another episode of Impossible Equals I'm Possible. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for this episode. This week for me has been a nostalgic week, to say the least. A year ago, I was in Cabo San Lucas for my first international trip, and it was actually a powerful memory because I remember stumbling across a journal from my retreat there, and I had talked about how I wanted to create a podcast because that's really what the goal was. And when I was on this journey of exploration, I was in finance at the time, so I didn't really have a lot of time to dedicate to you know producing, editing, paying. I didn't really want to invest yet because I wasn't sure. And then I was introduced to live streaming, and I loved the genuineness of it, the fact that it was in real time, nothing was edited, you didn't have to edit it. This is why I talk so much about building your network intentionally, because I didn't really even have to do any work for guests. It was build relationships with people, ask them to come on and share their story. And really, what this live show was all about was getting people to chase their potential instead of accepting their reality. When I came onto LinkedIn and I really started taking it seriously as a creator, it was during a lot of massive layoffs. And I'll never forget the endless scrolling that I would do, and I would just see green banners of people getting laid off. And I thought to myself, what is something that I can do to bring a little inspiration to the platform, bring more life to the platform, and give people an opportunity to share their story. And the guest that I have tonight is an absolute magical being. I don't have to tell you that if you know who he is, but this this topic really hits home to me because he's one of the greatest fathers that I've ever met. His story of overcoming health challenges, um, his own childhood challenges, and now what he's done for his kids is so deeply inspiring to me because I've grown up most of my life without a dad. My dad was a drug addict. He passed away when I was 16 years old, and the only father figure that I had, and my grandpa passed away a year later. So I've spent most of my life around women, and they've been the most impactful people in my life. And this conversation is so powerful. So I'm going to introduce my guest. So my guest tonight is Michael Padurano, or as I like to call him, my soul brother. And Michael's overcome many challenges in life since he was a child, from various forms of abuse and all types of addiction. He's made millions and lost it all time and time again. And the most inspiring part of his story is the battle he fought for custody of his children. Through that journey, his mission was to give his children the experience that he didn't receive through healing, transparency, and being who they are. Michael has used his spiritual gifts to heal himself from what was supposed to be a debilitating stroke. And I love this quote because this is always the first question anybody who's a speaker, anytime you come on a show, they always ask you, like, who are you, right? And his quote here sums it up. It says, I'm a multifaceted, multidimensional spiritual being living in a human experience. And for me, I've been practicing, or not really practicing per se, but more exploring my spirituality more. And this person coming on is an absolute genius. So with no further ado, I want to introduce my soul brother, Michael Padurano.
Hey, Paul. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. I don't know about genius. I don't know about many things, but I am me, and I love being me. So that's an amazing thing every day that I get to be myself. So,
Yeah. Yeah, this is
mm,
this is such a powerful conversation, right? Because you and I talk about it all the time. Like, there's so many people that we see on social media, and a lot of it is not real. And one of the things that I love so much about you is that you're probably more transparent than I am about things, which is pretty crazy because I consider myself pretty transparent. But tell it basically kind of give us a, and I know we don't have time for like the full story, but kind of talk to us about how r- some of the challenges that you've had to overcome, what it was like when you were younger, and everything kind of in between that's brought you to this point of where you're at now. Because I'm always blown away with the saying that you put on your LinkedIn profile, right? You know that you're a multifaceted, multidimensional human being, or spiritual being living a human experience. And I know you don't like labels, and you and I talk all the time about how we need to just be ourselves and kind of let people sort themselves. So would love to hear more about how Michael became who he is.
So I was adopted at birth, and I was abused physically from 2 to 9 and emotionally until I was 14, verbally and emotionally. It was my mother that was doing the abuse. My father was an emotional void. His way of showing love was financial security for the family. So that's where I get my distaste for money, because of the way that it was used in my childhood and the way that there was no emotional support for me whatsoever while growing through that. Um, I started drinking at 9. I started doing hardcore drugs at 12. I had my first 3 ODs when I was 12, but I already had 3 near-death experiences before that. So, it was a journey through childhood. And in 95, 94, when my mother was diagnosed with the chronic illness, she changed overnight and became this really kind, loving person. And for me, I was too far gone already. I was already 15. I was already abusing drugs. I was already numbing myself in every way possible. I was addicted to sex. I was addicted to women. Even at 15 years old, I was addicted to drugs, to alcohol, anything I could to numb myself, whatever I could do to numb my emotions, to numb my gifts, to numb everything about who I was. So I had no recollection of even who that was at that point anymore. Because I also got my spiritual gifts through my first near death experience at 3.5, 4 years old. And when I came back with those, my mother, in her abusive ways, dragged me to neurologists, psychologists, therapists, everything, because she thought I was crazy because I was sharing my gifts. And I started using them to manipulate people to stay away from me at that point, because I knew how to use them to keep people away from me. And because I ended up being right, it started scaring people, which then created this nice wall for people to leave me alone. And she started freaking out, and she brought me to all these specialists and had all these tests done, until one of them finally looked at her and said, "This kid is very special. I've never seen a scan of a brain like his. Leave him alone." And at that point, she finally started calming down about that crap. And then a couple years later, she got diagnosed with that illness. And then once she got diagnosed, it was all about saving her own life when she was met
Mhm.
with mortality. And she shifted and became this loving person. But it didn't matter. I couldn't receive it at that point. I didn't
Yeah.
know. I didn't believe I deserved it. I didn't want to be alive. I went on this death mission of trying to die because I didn't want to live anymore.
Mm.
For about my whole years of addiction was really to try and kill myself, to
Yeah.
uh, really get it done so that I didn't have to go through another near death experience and keep coming back.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting hearing you share a lot of that, because a lot of the things that you shared I can relate to from my experience, like with my childhood. I mean, for me it was a little different because I wouldn't really say that I grew up in like an abusive household per se, but for me it was just more of like you were seen and not heard type of thing. And I guess for me, I've always been so used to change that it it's made it like, I don't want to say easy, because I mean easy's a not, I don't think anything's really easy, right? We all choose our own hard and challenges and how you want to label it, but it it made it a lot more, I guess, common for me to experience change because I had experienced it my entire life. And the thing that's always been interesting to me is that, and you and I talk about this all the time, is that the true gift that we were given by our parents was basically how not to live our life, right? Like and we talk about it all the time, is that sometimes, most more often than not, actually, people will teach you kind of what not to do than actually like teach you things that, oh, you should do. And that in many instances is more invaluable because of the amount of time that you save. And looking back, for me, I always wondered, and I guess that's why I'm always drawn to people who have these like really challenging obstacles, because when I look at the environment and the family history and all these type of things that I've experienced, I'm like, why wasn't I a drug addict? My dad was a drug addict. Wasn't I a smoker? Like, my grandparents smoked and did all these type of things around me. And and you and I talk all the time about this idea of self-awareness, and I really do believe, for me, that that was really the one thing that I've probably always had, but I really tried to like suppress it, because, and we always talk about Marianne Williamson, but this idea that our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate, but that we're powerful beyond measure, and it's not our darkness that scares us, but it's our light. And I can completely relate with everything that you said about money, because that's kind of how it was for me, where my grandparents weren't really able to like spend time with me and do all these things because they were older and they could buy me stuff. And it got to this point for me where that was my idea of not really showing love to people, but just like showing them that they were important to me, was by like always buying things. And yeah, what an incredible story that you've had. Wow, where to begin? The part that's really powerful and that really touches me about this whole conversation is, I said it before in the introduction, I have so much respect for you, not only as a person, but as a father, right? Because I didn't have a dad growing up, and I feel like one of the things that I I've had to kind of unpack in my adult life, really over the past 3 to 4 years, was this idea that the closest thing that I had to a dad was my grandpa. But because he was old school and it was how the way that things were back then, emotion, it was like suppress everything, like it was a sign of weakness type of thing. And I know that that was a commonality in your experience, because you've always talked about how you've always been kind of an emotional person, but you went through that suppression as well. And I'm kind of curious, like, was that part of the reason why you turned to like drugs, sex, all these type of things, was like you really couldn't like be yourself, so you had to try to escape, as we like to say.
100%. And everything becomes an escapism, right? Because there was a point in time where I had 13 active companies. So I just kept incorporating and creating new business plans because that would keep me busy and help me avoid myself also. So everything becomes toxic when we overboard it and we don't balance ourselves. It's over years. Like, I mean, I got sober in 2006, so I've been sober over 17 years now. But like, I didn't even do the emotional work then. I didn't do the emotional work until 2018, when I decided that I had to choose myself, separate myself from my ex-wife, which unfortunately meant leaving my children, knowing what they were going to probably go through, working out a verbally civil separation. And as soon as I got on the plane, she immediately took my kids to meet a guy that she was dealing with that she met online. Within 3 weeks, she moved my kids across the state of Arkansas, and I had no idea where my kids were for 5 months. So, I mean, there was so many layered stories and dramas around this. And I was back in Florida, 1,300 miles away, starting to work on myself. And it was soul wrenching and gut wrenching, having no access to my kids. My kids were everything to me. I swore I'd never be that kind of father. But I knew that the only way I could be there for them was to start understanding how to be there for myself. And I had to take that step back to make that huge leap forward. And I sacrificed the short term, and my kids got hurt drastically because of it. Now, at some point in the future, they're going to be grateful for what they grew through,
Yeah.
because it's going to give them strength and courage that they never even thought they had. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're so easy to label that this is horrible, this is tragic, this is horrendous circumstances, these are bad. You know, all that does is put a preconceived notion around an experience.
Yep.
And who am I to make my mind think a specific way about any individual part of my experience? So what I've learned is to be a lot more objective and stop using good, bad, right, wrong, all the labels, because this is a
Yeah.
growing, I call it growing forward. Like this is just a constant evolution and growth state that I live in. So there's no wrong when you're growing. You be accountable. You own it. You're accountable to those that you impact. You're accountable to those that you don't. You're accountable to those that mean something to you.
Yeah.
You know, things become a priority when they're a priority. They automatically become a priority to you. When something means something to you, it becomes a priority. But none of us put ourselves at that category because we
Yeah.
don't even understand what that means. We're so busy and so busy trying to be the martyr, so busy trying to sacrifice ourselves for others, so busy trying to prove that we have a worth when
Yep.
we have an intrinsic value, just being a human being. Being
Yeah.
on this planet is a miracle. It's 400 trillion to one that would be a human, and then 150,000 people die every day.
Yeah. I
So, I
com-
mean, it's a complete miracle to be alive. So
yeah.
just be happy to exist. You don't have to prove it to anyone.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said. And before I respond, I just want to say hello to some people who are here with us. Michelle, so good to see you. Who else is here? Ken Dunner. Oh, Lord, please tell me you didn't get banned from LinkedIn. Ken Dunner,
No,
not
he's
again.
back. KD. Oh, no, he's on YouTube. Maybe he is banned on LinkedIn
Yeah.
now.
Oh, Ken, I hope
I
not
don't
again.
know.
Amber's here. So good to see you, my friend. How are you doing? Michael and I are sending you love. I know you've been having a tough time, but thank you so much for being here with us. And it's not tragic, it's transition. And oh man, I mean, you've said so many things, Michael, but like I remember when I started speaking in audio events when I had like really healed from a lot of the things that I went through. And I would always say to people, and this would always like trigger messages in my DMs, but I would always say that I'm so grateful for all the adversity that I was gifted at a young age.
Mhm.
And when people hear the word adversity and gift in the same sentence, they usually are like, oh, what's going on here? All of these type of things. But everything that you said is so true, I'm curious on your thoughts on this. But I've even had to be honest with myself, right, and have a lot of these deep conversations. I feel like than more than anything,
I love you, Kenny.
a lot of us like really take life for granted, right? Because
Mhm.
like you said, it's we're here, and besides LinkedIn, most of the world's like complaining about like what's going on. I
Mhm.
remember one time, and you know me, I normally like don't lose my cool and all these type of things, but I had to say something because I was in an audio event where literally for 1 hour we were talking about gratitude and like everything like positive, but it was always constantly like people talking about what they didn't have. And I was like, okay, well, let's change this conversation a bit and let's talk about what we do have, right? And I, I I really identified with what you shared about keeping or taking care of yourself first, because that was something that I had to learn. And when I look back, I was able to do it right at the expense of myself, and I was constantly playing kind of this yo-yo, if you will, with death, right? Because it was like I wasn't taking care of myself, and it was 2 years for me of working like crazy hours and not really eating, sleeping, exercise, doing all these type of things. And every single day, I would just constantly like take the chance of, oh shoot, today could be your last day, and you're doing this. And what I'm really curious for you, because you've had so many like experiences, and I know you and I talk about it all the time, that you've had so many near death experiences, you've had so many things that you've overcome, you've met so many incredible people. What was really kind of that one experience that you had that really kind of like changed everything for you?
There isn't one. I
Mm,
mean, the first one was getting abused by my mother because that's the greatest gift I've ever received in this lifetime.
mm,
Because without that experience, I would never have had the fortitude to fight for my children, to
yeah,
protect them from what they went through. So everything is a gift. It's all how we look at it and how we appreciate it. I
Yeah.
don't condone how she handled it, right? But I
Mhm.
forgave her for what she did without condoning it.
Yep.
So it's about releasing ourselves from this pressure that we put upon ourselves.
Yep.
Because what I look at is we hold so much resentments and pain and torture against ourselves.
Hmm.
When somebody wrongs us, and then we forgive them. We don't forgive them for them. We forgive them for ourselves.
Yep.
But at what point do we look in the mirror and forgive ourselves? We can't
Yeah.
love ourselves if we don't forgive ourselves. Because
Yep.
99% of the time, we're holding something against ourselves for every
Hmm.
experience that we have in life.
Yeah.
Because in some level, we intuitively knew that something was going to happen, or our gut said that something was going to come and we didn't listen to it, or we felt the situation was getting bad and we didn't leave. Or, I mean,
Yep.
there's so many circumstances that we wait too long, right? Because we can't abandon someone. Oh God, I'm abandoning someone. But it's
Yeah.
okay to abandon ourselves, because
Yeah.
that's what we do the whole time. I mean, the whole time, like, this is mind blowing. Like, we're so scared to abandon someone else, but we're so willing to abandon ourselves.
Yep.
How could we be anything to anyone else if we're constantly abandoning ourselves? Like, I just don't. Thanks, Kenny. I just don't get it though. How can you possibly be anything to anyone else if you're abandoning yourself every step of the way?
Yeah.
So at some point, even my children, my 6-year-old even knows,
Hmm.
Dad, you're off today. Go meditate. Dad, you're off today. Go write a self forgiveness letter. Dad, you're off. Go walk away. Get away from me. Go journal. Go do something. Like, go clear your head. Like, even my 6-year-old knows what to do. Like, it's the greatest gifts I can give my children, is to give them the tools that they absorb from me doing them,
Yeah.
seeing the difference that it has on me. And as a 6-year-old starts getting older, rather than her looking for something to numb or something to escape to, she's
Hmm.
going to say, "Hey, Dad, what are those self forgiveness letters you did? Or how do I meditate? Because I remember what it did for you."
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is living the example.
Yep.
Like, it's really easy. We are not what we say we are. We are what we act we are. How we
Yep.
act is what we really are.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
the
I,
words that come out of our mouth means nothing.
yeah, for sure. I remember earlier this year I got to train with like one of the top performance coaches in the world. His name is Ben Newman, and he's been like a coach for the past, I don't know, 10 Super Bowl champions. I know his latest client was the Denver Nuggets, who won the NBA championship. And he always says, I want to have a conversation with your action,
Hmm.
because that's what's gonna, you can do all this. He's like, but I'm gonna look at your action and what you're doing and what I can actually see. And that was one of the things for me that I really had to learn, because I feel like a lot of people say that you need to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I mean, I guess like that's kind of true to some extent. Like you need to be kind of trusting somewhat. I mean, you don't want to be so closed off that like anytime somebody tells you something, you're like, no, no, no. But like I do believe that it's important to pay attention to what people do. And I know that for me, I remember, and I shared this story about the whole impossible equals impossible thing. But when I went on my latest adventure in the beginning, I didn't want to share it publicly, because I was like, oh, this is embarrassing. There's a lot of shame and all these type of things. Like, I was a finance person and I chose to give it up. And it was like all the things that would help like thousands of people prevent. I couldn't do it for myself. And then what I had to realize was there was a reason for it. And it was because it became the greatest accelerator that I could have asked for, because living your brand is like the greatest accelerator, right? I remember having a conversation with one of my close connections, and she said, "You talk about impossible equals impossible." She said, "You're basically putting a target on your back, because people are going to look at you every time that things go wrong. How do you show up? How do you do this? When things go crazy in the audio events, like how do you handle yourself? All these type of things." And what I realized is that, and you and I talk about this all the time, that self-awareness is really like the greatest superpower that we have, right? And emotional intelligence is something that a lot of people talk about. And I'm sure you have like your own definition for it, but for me, I really look at it as the ability to be honest in a respectful way is kind of like my definition of emotional intelligence. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, they'll tell you what they want to hear, or they're not willing to share the truth because they don't want to offend people, right? And you and I talk about this all the time when it comes to your story and being who you are. Like we live in a world where everybody's offended nowadays. I mean, you can say you don't like a certain color and somebody's offended, or oh, I don't like this and somebody's offended, right? It makes it really hard to figure out, okay, where's the where's kind of the line here, right? It's and I'm curious for you because one of the things that's really helped me gain a lot of perspective and kind of guidance is this kind of code that I've created for myself, right? The five eyes: impact, integrity, intuition, inspiration, and the fifth eye is impossible equals impossible. And really kind of living my life by those values, right? And using it to sort people and all these type of things. Do you kind of have something like that, or for you, is it kind of just all based on your intuition? Because I know you and I have talked about how for both of us, intuition kind of guides a lot of the decisions and things that we do. So I'm just curious for you, like, do you have something like that? I know your self
No,
forgiveness letters that you
no.
use are probably up there, but yeah.
I'm just always authentically me. I can't. It's not my responsibility how somebody receives me. And if somebody wants to talk about how they receive me, I'm 100% open to it. I also don't believe in boundaries because I'm not going to put walls around myself. I believe that boundaries create walls. I create temporary boundaries for permanent people so that they understand how I like to be treated, and I create permanent boundaries for temporary people. So basically, they're just removed from my life. They're just gone. I don't create a
Hmm.
boundary and keep people around that they're not aligned with me. It's
Yeah.
not my space to drag somebody behind me. That's not what I'm here for.
Yeah.
I'm not here to drag people kicking and screaming. I thought I was for a very long time, and I spent a lot of time and energy doing that.
Mm.
But it was lessons of learning that you can't take people somewhere that they don't want to go themselves.
Yeah.
I can only guide
Absolutely.
somebody where they see, and you can only guide somebody based on where you've been.
Yeah.
Like if you've only been this deep, you can't take somebody this deep. Like you
Hmm.
can't go further than where you've been.
Yep.
Like, it's great to be a coach. It's great to be all these different things. Be authentic about where you're at.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that you're still healing and you're spending the rest of your life healing. Don't say
Yep.
that you're healed. Don't say that you're where you're getting, that you're done on your journey. Don't try and be the authority figure over anybody.
Oh yeah.
Being a coach is being a guide and standing side by side with someone,
Yep.
not being an authority figure, because you're not the authority figure of their life. You're the authority figure of your own life.
Yep. And that's
That
what. Go ahead.
that's why the greatest gifts I give to people is I empower them to be self-empowered. I inspire them to be
Mm.
self-inspired. I want
Yeah.
stuff that no one can take away from them, not even me. I
Yep.
don't ever want to be a conduit to their higher power. I want them to be direct to it.
Mm.
Everything I teach people and guide people towards is stuff that no one can take away from them.
Yeah. Tamara says, "Oh, we have Tamara here. So good to see you, Tamara."
Hi,
Sh
tomorrow.
What does she have to say? Love what Michael had to say that people actually want to go there. Yeah, it's that was one of the things that was a really hard lesson for me to learn, and it has been probably the greatest lesson that I've learned is that you have to let people make their own choices, especially when you know that it's wrong, right? And I remember part of the reason why I got into finance, and obviously you and I have had this conversation, Michael, because my mom was like the worst person that I knew with money, and I had watched my grandpa bail her out time and time and time again, and I really do believe that for him, the reason why he did it was because he felt like it was kind of his fault because they
Mhm,
enabled that type of
mhm.
behavior. But I remember for me, I mean, I don't even know how much money I've paid off, my mom's like debt only for her to run up more stuff. And it got to the point where I had said like, I wouldn't, well, yeah, I guess it was like an ultimatum, and I had said, hey, if this happens again, like, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to spend my entire life like constantly bailing you out. And it's been really interesting how in many instances that decision for me to change my life, right, have the courage to leave and start over and go to different places, was the catalyst for my mom to change her life. So I'm really curious for you, because you talked about something earlier that I feel is so important, and I'm so excited to see where your kids are going to be when they're my age, because they've had a massive head start on me with, everything that you were so transparent to the point where you've talked to them about money,
Mhm.
emotions, basically everything. I mean, uh,
I talked to them about my addictions, my sex addiction, my drug addiction. I talked to
yeah,
them about myself, how I used to despise myself, and how
yeah,
now I unconditionally love myself. I talked to them about that transition all the time. That
yeah,
took years. I mean, I spent most of my life despising myself. I used
yeah,
to shower in the dark because I couldn't even look at myself. That's how disgusting I felt about just who I was as a being. It had nothing to do with my physical
mm,
appearance. I
yeah,
just couldn't stand myself at all. And
yep,
then eventually, for the first time in my life, in August of 2020, I said I love myself.
yeah,
And then by the end of 2021, I started saying I'm in love with myself. So I started ignoring my flaws, and I went into the
mm,
love is blind phase, right? So, I started loving myself and ignoring my flaws and looking at only my strengths and paying attention to that. And then after my stroke last year, I realized that I unconditionally love myself through and through.
yep,
Like my flaws are my greatest strengths.
yep,
And I am the first one to be accountable to my 6 year old. I'm the first one to scream at the top of my lungs and then go apologize to my 6 year old. I do it all the time. I look, we all have emotions. You either
yep,
learn to bury them or you release them. And
yep,
sometimes it's screaming, sometimes it's yelling. But you know what? What I've taught my kids is we are in an emotional safe space.
yep,
Go ahead, yell, scream, get it out. Go sit there, let it flow, and then when it's gone, go up to the rest of us and be accountable and own it, and
yep,
explain to us why you reacted that way. And that the only reason they're able to do that, even my 6 year old does it, is because I opened that space for them. I had the courage to be vulnerable enough to apologize to my 6 year old for the way that I reacted to however she behaved. Whether
yep,
her behavior was right or wrong doesn't matter. That's her journey. My reaction was wrong. That I need to own. And I created that safe space for them. The other
yep,
enormous transition in my life was going from self awareness to compassionate self awareness,
mm,
because now I'm a lot gentler. I'm not as harsh. I'm not as blunt. I don't
yep,
judge anyone else because I don't judge myself. I have zero judgment. I just state things exactly, objectively as I see them,
yep,
or my perspective base, which is the other thing that I say. There's over 8 billion people on this planet. We all have our own perspective, and everyone is right. Every person is right. Every
yep,
truth is right. There is no wrong. There is no right. It's all just perspectives.
yep,
So until we're willing to be vulnerable enough to say we're both right, but this is how I reacted, the other person says, well, this is how I reacted, then there is no safety. There is no healing,
yeah,
because that's where the real vulnerability is admitting that I own my reaction. But
yep,
most people don't have that wherewithal, that
mhm,
acceptance and understanding and self-love, because until you love yourself, you can't accept yourself. You
yep,
can't accept yourself until you're aware. Like, it's awareness opens the door, but it's everything else that builds on top of it. It's the
yeah,
self-forgiveness, the self-love, the the self-compassion that just
mhm,
keeps building that self-worth and that self-love, and it just keeps elevating things over time.
yeah,
Everybody is right. There is no wrong. But you can't express those differences unless you're able to sit down and people are willing to be accountable for their actions.
right, yeah.
But
That's Go ahead.
no, go ahead. That was a
That
good rant. You can run now.
you talked about like so many things. I mean, we could. I feel like you and I could talk for hours on this conversation, but something that you talked about, and it was something that you and I were talking about in in the pre-live is this idea that there's kind of this whole negative connotation with judgment and comparison, but it's really just the perspective, that the way that we look at it, right? Because the conversation that you and I were having is that part of the whole self-awareness and the compassionate self-awareness that you were talking about is being able to judge and compare how we are investing our time, our energy, and our money for ourselves, right? And sometimes it just means that, people say something, or they do something that doesn't align with us, and it's not necessarily saying that we are judging them, but we are making a decision for ourselves
So you're
that.
making a judgment call.
Right.
You're not judging. And I think, see, this is where we get really stuck in language, because words mean something different to everyone. So
Yep.
when you're phrasing judging, people are automatically thinking that you're judging others. But the reality is you're really just making a personal judgment call of your own bandwidth, and where
Right.
you can expand your energy, or where it doesn't align with where your direction you're heading. Like,
Yep.
people are so scared to abandon others. People are so scared to let others down and to not be there for others and not prioritize themselves. You know how simple it is to sit down and say, we don't really align at this point. So I think that it's best that we just go our own ways for now. And when things align again, we'll come back together on its own.
Yep.
Like, why can't we have that conversation?
Yep.
Because we don't trust ourselves. That's why.
Yep.
We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. We don't want to look bad to anyone else. I don't give a shit what anyone thinks of me. I don't
Yep.
care. I unconditionally love myself, and I know that my intent is pure, and I know
Yep.
that the impact I have on those that are close to me changes their life forever. You hang out with me long enough, you're going to start loving yourself. You're going to start empowering yourself. You're going to start changing your whole life. Your kids' lives, your grandkids' lives, your great grandkids' lives are going to change from knowing me. And
Hmm.
that's fine. But I'm not for everyone. And I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
I don't need everyone.
Yep.
My friend did a post today, and she's an African American woman, and she's really big in that, that race war that's been going on, that was
Mm.
created by media, and she sees through it a lot. She's also very spiritual, and she's an amazing friend of mine. But she made a post, and it's like, how many of my white friends can say that they have more than 8 black friends in their life, and that they will listen to their opinion? My response to her was, who says I have 8 friends?
Mm.
Because the reality is, I'm my own friend.
Mm.
The people I spend the most time with are my kids, because they're my kids. Do I have others that I spend time with? Yes. Do any compare to the amount of time that I spend with my kids or myself? No. Do I have friends? Yes. Do I have people that I consider family? Yes. But they're not that close to me. But I listen to everyone because I unconditionally love myself, so I can unconditionally love others. We
Yep.
set conditions and we set these labels, and we don't describe what it means to us.
Yep.
That's why I'm so big on creating definitions around what I mean,
Oh
because
yeah.
everyone takes it so
100%.
differently. You
Yep.
know, when I say one word, it can mean 100 different things to 100 different people.
Yep.
That's why I always try to explain and define what something means to me. When I
Yep.
explain the transitions of my self love journey from despising myself to unconditional, I explain it because it means something different to everyone.
Yep.
Every step means something different to everyone. There's infinite ways, infinite possibilities. You can't just create a one set plan for everyone and expect it to fit everyone. It's impossible. That's
Yep.
impossible, because the truth is we're infinite and there's limitless ways of doing things. So
Yep.
the goal is to create a plan, share it with as many people as you can, so that people can pull pieces that relate for them. They can make that step in their journey and then go find other pieces to make their next step, because
Yep.
everybody's got to create their own individualized plan.
Yep. And I would add to what you said, that for me, I'm big on talking about experience over theory, because I feel like when you talk about your experience and you're sharing like a story, it's something that's kind of tangible, right? Like people can kind of grasp that. Whereas if you're sharing data or information, like it might get lost in the whole conversation. And we have some new people that joined. I believe Damien's here, but I can't see him for some reason because these LinkedIn live videos have gone to the gutter lately. But Erica's here. Good to see you, Erica. She says judgment versus discernment. Yeah, that's a good word. Maybe I might have to use that. And where I kind of want to go next, Michael, is
Hmm.
you and I talk so much about personal development. Obviously, personal development for me has been a big part of my journey over the past few years. And you've had so many experiences. You've gotten to meet so many people. I'm really curious for you, who's been kind of the most impactful um, person or mentor in your life, obviously, besides yourself? And what was the most kind of valuable lesson that they've taught you?
So, truth of the matter is, okay, and I'm gonna be 100% blunt honest about this. I am the greatest impact on myself.
Mm,
There is no one outside of myself that impacts me the way that I impact me.
mm,
So, I mean, I know that's not the answer that you're looking for, and I know that's not what you're seeking, but I'm not going to give in on this because every step of the way, there's been Sherpas that come in and give me another step, right? They give me they're
Interesting.
by my side for another step of the way. No one, people don't, when you're growing and you're growing at such a fast rate, I call it growing forward because it's a perpetual
Mm,
state of growth. When you're moving at that rate, nobody stays forever.
yep.
It's the tag and release. You give your piece to somebody and then they move on to the next person for the next stage.
Mm,
So, I've worked with somewhere between 40 and 50 coaches, combination of coaches, guides, Sherpas, shamans, priests, rabbis. I've
mm,
worked with them all. I've been ordained by two different shamans, but I don't take the label because I don't think it applies to my lifestyle. I like delivery food, I
mm.
like heater, and I like air conditioning way too much. I'm not moving in with the bugs. I left South Florida for a reason. I don't like the bugs. I don't like the humidity. So I'm not going to the jungle. So I don't live that way of life. I just, to me, I don't accept labels. I don't use
Mm,
labels. I am who I am. I'm me. There's no other me ever in existence. And every one of us has that experience.
yeah,
But the true gift is accepting and honoring and loving ourselves and respecting ourselves enough to love others. There's not a single person that I've had met in my life, Paul, that I wouldn't allow back in my life. Now, they won't be as close to me, and if they still don't align with where I'm headed, then they won't stay very long. But I will always allow people to come back.
yeah,
It's an open door policy. You can come back, you can leave anytime you want. I don't Doesn't impact me because
yeah,
my worth is not contingent on who's around me. I don't care.
yeah.
You can be a Bainer, you can be a homeless man.
It's interesting hearing you talk about that, because that's kind of one of the things that I'm learning. I believe it was like Tyler Perry or Steve Harvey that said, like, sometimes people are in your life for a season or like a reason or something along the lines. And one of the things that I'm learning is, as you kind of go, there's a saying, right? Like, new levels, new devils. Sometimes, like, you have to kind of leave people behind. I've actually been experiencing it with a lot of like my friends and connections lately, where it's just kind of like you you just go in different directions. And sometimes, like, that's always really the some of the worst kind of relationships, right? Because it's kind of like you just slowly drift apart, type of thing. I'm kind of curious from your perspective, and it's probably going to be different. And I love everything that you said, and I love that you stay true to your beliefs, because that was one of the things for me that you've seen me do in events is I flip the room even when I know the room doesn't want to be flipped, because it's so important to give people new perspectives, because that's how we learn, that's how we grow. And but I'm curious for you, like, what type of insight do you have for not necessarily like being able to keep up, because there's just so much that goes on in life, right? Like, people have new jobs, family, relationships, all these type of things. But what would you really say would be like a good strategy or a suggestion to kind of make sure that you don't slowly like drift away, especially when life kind of is gets like chaotic per se.
Just be you. That's it. Just
Yeah.
be you and be real. That's it. There's nothing else to it. It's that simple.
Mm.
Because the reality is, anyone that's in your sphere, anyone, anyone, close friend, far friend, distant friend,
Mm.
associate, anyone that you might have just met on the street, when you're in a bad space, those that can feel it will rally around you,
Mm.
because that's what a lot of us are here for, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's people that I'm by their side, thick and thin. Lindsay, for an example, right? We do the Instagram lives every week, like nonstop, all day, all day. And all I
Mm.
keep telling her is, I said, don't get too used to me being this in your life, because it's not going to last forever. Because
Mm.
when you get to a place that you're where you're going,
Yeah.
just know that it's my turn to move on. And that's the
Yeah.
truth. I'm here to support you when you're at your worst. Yeah, I can help you I can help you get much further along. But the wisdom and the guidance that I'm giving you when you're at your worst
Mm.
is not only gonna quantum leap you
Yeah.
ahead of where you would have been if everything was perfect.
Yeah.
Because as you make your steps forward, the wisdom that I imparted upon you is going to make more and more sense. And then the next guide is going to come into your life. And that's just how the world works.
Yeah.
I don't hold people hostage. Go
Yeah.
live. Go be free. You want to come
Yeah.
back? Come back. I'm still here. I'm always here. I always answer the phone. Doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
That's
I'm
powerful.
but
Really powerful.
I'm not gonna chase anybody. I
Yeah.
don't care. I reach
Absolutely.
out to people, I communicate with people, but I'm not chasing anyone. I don't
Yeah.
chase anything. I don't chase clients, I don't chase people, I don't chase money. I attract everything into my life that I need comes to me.
Yep. Yeah, I'm
Nothing.
definitely
Yeah.
getting to that point in terms of, and that's kind of where I want to go next. So we had talked in the beginning when I read your bio about how you essentially used your spiritual gifts and talents and all these type of things to heal yourself
Hmm.
from a stroke that was doctors and specialists and all of these people that you were basically going to see told you that it was going to be debilitating, and you've essentially kind of not only healed yourself from it, but you've said that you're the best that you've kind of ever been right at this point.
I'm
And I
healthier
want
than
to,
I've healthier than I've ever been in my life. My
yeah,
blood work is better than it's ever been. I mean, in every facet. Um, yeah, I mean, it was November 16th of 2022, so not even a year ago. Next week's a year. I had a
wow.
triple stroke, which they consider a major stroke, in
Mm.
3 places in my brain. There was an 86% chance I'd be a vegetable for the rest of my life. I was paralyzed on half my body for 3 weeks.
Mm.
Well, between 3 and 6 weeks. So I was dragging myself up and down the stairs, taking care of my 3 kids, half my body paralyzed, and I was sleeping a lot.
Wow.
But what I do is I go into a healing meditative stasis every single night in my sleep, every night, even till today. I put on frequencies. I intuitively find the ones that I need to hear for that night. I
Mm.
mean, across the whole physiological spectrum with theta, beta, alpha waves all mixed in,
Yeah.
binaurals all mixed in. It's just I go intuitively based on what's right for me at that moment. And
Yeah.
every night I sleep to it. And I visualize the healing, the column of light and the healing stasis. And it's everything that I guide people through and that I share with people so that they can do it for themselves. I don't want to do it for them. I want them to understand that they can do it for themselves, that they have to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
We can overcome anything. People are worried about being vegan or being carnivores or eating a certain thing or not eating a certain thing or drinking or smoking or this or that. The
Yeah.
only reality is, until you realize the power that you are intrinsically and how you can heal yourself, nothing else matters. None of the rest of the bullshit matters.
Yeah.
You've got to be accountable, acknowledge, and aware of what our self-empowered bodies our souls are able to do.
Yeah.
We can regenerate, we can heal. I mean, look at what Dr. Joe Dispenza did. Look at how I healed. There is medical proof of what I did. Like,
Yeah.
my doctor literally calls me a medical miracle. Like,
Hmm.
she looks at me and says, "You're a walking miracle," because I am better than I was before. I weigh less. My blood pressure is down. Everything's down. My sugar is way
Yeah.
down. Everything. My triglycerides don't even show up on the chart anymore. My cholesterol's off so low it doesn't show up. It's under 100 total when it used to be
Wow.
over 300. It's just insane. But I
Yep.
also am on a serious regimen of supplements, and I have my daily rituals, which is
Mm,
my energy work, my meditation, my
mm-hmm.
breath work. I start my day every day like that. I finish my day every day like that.
Mm,
Other than when I fell and hurt my knee about a couple months ago, I was exercising every day, and not crazy exercise because I have 3 kids. Where the hell am I going? Like I can't go anywhere. So everything's simple and inside it, just using my own body weight against me.
yeah.
Our
Or
body
just like
weight,
going for a walk, it's
right?
like,
Our Well, I can't do that. Because my 6-year-old wants me to carry her, and that's full workout. Like I'm not playing that game. She weighs more than half my body, but like I mean, like like it's just my own body weight, like push-ups and stomach crunches and leg lifts and all these weird things that you can do
yeah.
that they're not super physical, they're not super crazy, but it adds up really fast
Mm-hmm.
and your strength builds really fast.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I was able to do 2 push-ups and be proud about doing 2 push-ups. Now I'm doing between 40 and 50 every morning. Like
Yeah.
this is just, do I pray anytime in between my healing? My meditation is my prayer.
Mm,
Like I pray through meditation.
yeah.
That's how I communicate with my higher power. I don't pray like go to church, pray, or go to temple, or
Yeah.
go to
I'm
those.
just so fascinated by everything that you shared because I remember like you and I first met because we had a lot of mutual friends
Mhm.
on LinkedIn, and I remember I think it was like Dr. Noopy's show that I heard, and I couldn't remember like the specifics, but I knew it was something like medical where it was like supposed to be catastrophic, and you essentially kind of healed yourself, and I was like really intrigued. And you know what's interesting, and I've shared this before, and I've shared it publicly that the whole like religion, spirituality, all these label type of things, it was such an uncomfortable situation for me because of what I had experienced. And when I became a little older, around like a teenager age, I had found out that I was kind of like in a cult. So the whole conversation about religion and spirituality was just so uncomfortable to me. But I guess I've always had the self awareness that like when people would share their like testimony and their story of using it to basically kind of heal themselves, a lot of people think that that's crazy. But I've always been just kind of curious, and when I hear your story, and the more that I've kind of dived into this idea of meditation, and that's kind of like where I've started with tapping into the whole
Mhm.
spirituality thing. It's interesting how it really just takes one thing to kind of have this like domino effect. Like you do one thing and then you start eating better and then you drink more water and then you start exercising and it's like, oh, it's like you're a brand new person. I'm curious for you though, when when it comes to this whole conversation of spirituality, right? Like where do you kind of draw the line? Because like everything else, there's so much information out there, right? Like there's numerous types of like techniques and all these type of things. Like how do you really know kind of where to get your information? Because I feel like for me, when I don't know about something, now it's different obviously because I know like the type of questions to ask, but I know there's a lot of people who that meditation is something that has become mainstream now and all these type of things. How do you really kind of differentiate like what's credible, what's valid, and what isn't? Because there's a lot of people who just say things for attention. I'm curious, like what insight can you share with people from your experience, like tips, things to look for, anything like that?
No voice is louder than my direct connection to my higher power.
Mm,
So if it intuitively doesn't feel right, then I don't go into it. I
mm,
stay in my own lane. I do intuitively what aligns, and that's it. As
yeah.
my direct connection. We all have our own direct connection. So we need to listen to ourselves. We need to stop creating false idols and false gods and false prophets and false
Mm,
influencers. Influencers are foolish. They don't know. They're just a person.
yep.
They don't know more than anyone else. They know what works for them. They don't know
Yep.
what would work for you. They don't even know who the hell you are.
Yep.
You need to know who you are and then figure out what works for you. Try
Yep.
different things. Like I stopped. It started when I stopped doing guided meditations because I noticed that the voice that was guiding him, no matter who it was, whether I respected them, loved them, trusted them, didn't know them, it
Mm,
didn't matter. whether it was an influencer, whether it was my next door neighbor, whether it was, didn't matter who it was, but it wasn't sitting right with me. So I started moving just to frequency based meditations. And everything I do is frequency based because that's the energy, the vibration of the universe. And I go, everything is based on frequency. Once I
Yeah.
moved into just frequency, then I started getting the messages directly. I don't need an outside authority figure. None of us do.
Mm.
And Kenny, you're hysterical. Yes, I do push-ups every day. Thank you very much. The good news is my weight is what builds the strength. So I'm in no rush to lose weight, Kenny, because that's what builds my strength. So I'm good. I'm happy. And remember,
Yeah.
round is the perfect shape. So why would I want to lose that? I love it.
No, that's so powerful, Michael. And with what you were sharing, that's something that I'm probably gonna like take and consider because I I was having a conversation with a hypnotherapist, and like
Mhm.
pretty much everybody that I talk to says like in the beginning it's a good idea to do guided meditation. So it's like you have an idea kind of like what to do, but that is an interesting insight that it might be an interesting idea to focus on like frequency than actual like somebody else's voice, because
Mhm.
one of our other soul brothers says that you are the frequency that you feel frequently, which I love the saying, and I believe that it's so true. And what's really fascinating about that I found about this whole thing, and I remember when you and I first had a conversation, and it was kind of a mind-boggling conversation because I don't know, we probably met for like an hour and a half, just sharing stories and all
Mhm.
these type of things. There were so many things that were similar, and you shared something with me that kind of like blew me away. And now you're doing like your own audio events,
Mhm.
Intuit Talks, which is like my favorite audio event. And I've done hundreds and gone to God knows how many of these things at this point. I'm curious for you, what was it that you saw with not only me but with the audio events that's really kind of aligned with you? Because I remember this like really clearly. You One of the first things that you told me is like you're an energy healer. And I remember looking at you like, what, Michael, you were like absolutely crazy. Like I have no idea what that means. I was still figuring out the whole spirituality thing at the time. And in many ways I was able to see that you were right because I had healed myself. And because I had done that, I was able to do it for other people.
Mhm.
Um, you and I talk about vulnerability all the time, and how uh, another saying from our soul brother Neil is vulnerability is really the permission slip. And one of the things that I had been saying a long, long time on LinkedIn, ever since I started the audio events, was that vulnerability isn't a superpower or isn't a weakness, it's a superpower.
Mhm.
And I remember like one of the first stages that I spoke on was about like men's emotional intelligence or
Mhm.
something, and it was like a men's panel, and I was like the youngest one on the panel, and I had sensed in many ways then that I had healed, but I never really looked at it from that perspective of kind of being an energy healer and just being able to hold space and have conversations and kind of invite people to dump. But what I want to ask you, because you and I have these conversations as well, these audio events get like super draining, right? Like when sometimes when they don't get draining for you.
No.
Oh, well, it gets draining for me sometimes. I remember
So
telling
so let me explain why it does that to everyone else.
yeah.
My belief in my higher power, which I call source, okay, is the source of all creation and everything in existence. Everything, everywhere, all time. Everything that's ever existed. Aliens, humans, everything. Any planets, any solar system, infinite space. So it has infinite resource. I
Mm,
directly connect to source every day, numerous times a day, and I ask source to flow through me. I direct on how to heal myself. I direct on all these different things that I've created that intuitively have come to me through my current life and past lives. So that answers your question. Yes, I believe in God, the label, but I call it source. It doesn't
mm,
care what you call it. I promise you, it's all the same. It's unconditional. There is no judgmental God. There is no fear-breeding God. It's unconditional agape love
Mm.
is what this creator of all is. Whatever you want to call it is up to you and your personal relationship with it. For me, it's Source. So I ask Source to perpetually fill me and expand me based on the space that I'm in, and to fill me with as much energy as I need to hold the space that I'm in. So
Yeah.
when I walk into those rooms, I expand and hold more space
Mm.
energetically. My energetic field triples, quadruples, quintuples. So what in the reality is, by the end of the night, I'm so wired I can't go to sleep for hours.
I remember that was something that you shared with me
But it's
after
how I
like,
feel because it
yeah.
doesn't drain me. I'm directly connected to infinite. So how could I ever be drained?
Yeah.
But
That's
it's
no,
the
that's
acknowledgement, the awareness, and the belief in the faith. We are what we believe, Paul. The
yeah.
only limits that we have in this existence is what we believe we have. It's why I
Yeah.
don't do boundaries. They're not real. These are self-created limits. These are psychologists telling you to protect yourself.
Mm.
And then all
Yep.
you do is you wall yourself up and you compartmentalize and you put shit all these different places. Next thing you know, you're a broken piece of a mess.
Yeah. No,
And
I
then you have heart
completely.
attacks and you have strokes and you have all this shit happen to you
Yep.
because you're fragmented. I don't believe in that shit. You're a whole multifaceted entity that plays many roles in this world, and you just embrace them all. You're just you. It's the
Yeah.
most special, amazing experience ever.
Yeah. I
Just
I
need to
com-
honor it.
I completely agree with what you said about boundaries and how they're
Yeah, but Amber, that doesn't count. You're in insomniac room and then saying you're up for hours afterwards. That doesn't count. You're an insomniac. Obviously, you're up for hours no matter what. I tell you to go to bed at 6 a.m. So, like, there's an issue here. But
yeah,
it's I love you to death, and I think that's awesome. I'm just busting your chops. But I just love how you worded that. My insomniac room.
insomniac
I'm
room.
up
I'm
for
up
hours
for hours.
afterwards. Well, yeah, that makes sense. You
Yeah.
just described why you're an insomniac. I love
Yeah.
you.
And I've told Amber too, like that is I know you had just talked about there's no boundaries, but for me that is my boundary. I don't go in that room anymore because I don't then I can't sleep after I go into that room.
But that's self
And
care, Paul, and that's self awareness. That's
yeah.
not a boundary. It's just you know that you need rest, so you rest.
Yeah.
I start my day at 4 a.m. On Fridays, I start my day at 5 a.m. I give myself an hour to sleep in because of my Thursday night room.
Yeah.
Because I want my 6 hours. I want my 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
That's what I know I need, so that's what I give myself. And I don't even set my alarm anymore. I just go to bed with the intent of this is what time I'm waking up in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm up 5 minutes before it every single day.
Yeah, it's interesting everything that you talked about is, and I guess for me, like I've been pretty transparent with everybody. Like I'm still learning about, the whole
So am I.
spiritual thing, and
So am I.
I
Every day's a
find,
journey.
yeah, I find personally that the more that you learn, the more that you don't know, because it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
there's just like so much more, and it gets overwhelming when people try to keep up with all these different titles, like how you talked about, right? Like expert
I don't
and
care.
authority and all these type of things. But what I'm really curious about, right, is, and I know this might be a hard question for you to answer because we had just talked about like labels and everybody's
Mm-hmm.
different and all these type of things. But let's say somebody's here, right? They know that they need to make kind of like a change in their life. Maybe they want to kind of go on their own spiritual journey
Mm-hmm.
and really kind of figure out who they are really like intrinsically. What type of insight or what can you share from kind of your experience that you wish that you knew on your spiritual journey that you could kind of share with other people? Like, say, if people wanted to say, connect directly to source, like, what are some things that you would suggest that they could do?
Reach out to me. I mean, I share my tools freely. I give them away for free. I don't ask for anything in return. You want somebody to work with you one on one. I'll work with you. Like yeah, I have coaching program, but I give my tools away for free to anyone who wants it, anyone who's seeking. I
Mm.
don't. There's no requirement to be a part of my life. There's no requirement to connect to your direct higher power, whatever you define it as. I help people find what their higher power is. I don't care what they call it. It doesn't matter to me. It's got to be their personal relationship, not my relationship. Who the
Yep.
hell am I in their life? No one. The first thing I would tell somebody is find somebody that you can relate to,
Yeah.
that you trust, that can help guide you in the process,
Yeah.
no matter who that is. and then take baby steps and learn what self-compassion is, because it's a very tedious journey. You're going to screw up more than you're going to be right, but just embrace it, because that's what we're here for, is the journey. We're not here to be right and be right about everything. We're not
Yeah.
here to influence others. We're not here to be an influencer. We're not here to be an authority figure. We're not here to have 100 million followers. We're
Hmm.
here to just inspire ourselves
Yeah.
and
And
help
create
others to
impact.
be, and create impact, and help others be inspired to be self-inspired.
Yeah.
You know how
I,
big of a gift that is, Paul, to inspire others to be self-inspired?
yeah.
They don't have to ever come to you to be inspired. They learn how to be inspired for themselves.
Yep.
Like, that's the only thing I want people to understand. Like, those are real gifts.
Yeah.
When nobody can take from you is a real gift.
Yep. I tell people all the time that if nothing will be able to inspire you more than your own story, because that's really the driving force. Like, I look at a lot of the mentors and people that I've had, and don't get me wrong, like, they're like incredible people, they have an incredible story, but what I always take away deep down internally is that I see the impact that their story had on other people, and it reminds me of what mine has done for other people. And more than anything, like, my story doesn't become what it is if I didn't have the courage to chase my potential instead of accepting my reality. So I completely agree with everything that you said as well, is that it really starts with you, right? And there goes the saying that you you have to be your biggest cheerleader, because you're with yourself 24/7, right? Like, you're going to spend the most time in this life with yourself. And oh man, this
So,
is
so
good.
let me preface that, okay? There are certain parts of our story that in the beginning of your journey, you're not ready to share, right? So if you want to be authentic to yourself, then align yourself with somebody who can guide you.
Yeah.
Find before you just start sharing your story, because sharing part of it, leaving out parts, makes you feel even worse about yourself because you're not being authentic.
Yeah.
So before you jump into the sharing part, unless you're willing to share it all, which some people are, some people aren't.
Yeah.
But if you're not and you don't align with how you want to share, then
Yep.
find somebody that you can relate to work with and guide you.
Yep.
Because when you present yourself to the world, you want to be as authentic as possible,
Yep.
right? And if you know you're holding back, then you're always going to be holding back,
Hmm.
because that's how
Yep.
you're teaching yourself to share. And that's what I think people get stuck on. They get in
Yeah.
this movement to go share, share, share,
Hmm.
but I'm not ready to share. Well, instead of somebody coming and saying, well, let's heal some of this and then go share, they're pushing everybody to share.
Yep.
So before you push somebody to share, push for them to understand where they're at first.
Yep.
Because
And
because if you start pushing yourself down an inauthentic path, you're just going to keep straying off that path of authenticity.
yeah, for sure.
So understand where you're at first. Find people that you can relate to, that you start trusting and you understand their journey, it parallels parts of yours,
Yep.
and take it a step at a time. There is no rush. Stop
Yep.
thinking there's a rush. Paul, you're 28 years old, 26 years old, 28. Like, it's insane. Like, seriously. Like, that's nuts. Don't be in a rush. You got
Yeah.
70 years left. Like, what are you worried about?
Yeah.
Who cares?
You know, it's interesting, right? And I've been like really transparent with people about it. And one of the things that I would say the most like powerful question to really ask yourself, at least that I've learned from my experience, is what is the price that you're willing to pay? Because there's a lot of things that you sacrifice to be completely authentic, right? Like, there's probably a lot of people that you're going to lose. There's probably going to be a lot of times where maybe people won't do business with you, all these type of things.
But are you
And you
really
need
losing anything if people that don't align with you leave?
no.
You're actually saving yourself stuff.
Yep.
So is there really a sacrifice, though, Paul? It's an investment into self.
Yeah, that's a good way
That's it.
to
It's
that's a
an
good way to
energetic
put that.
cost. That's it. It's an energetic cost. It's not a real cost. It's not an intrinsic cost. It's not costing you potentially outcomes. It's not
Yeah.
costing you relationships. It's not costing you friendships. It's not costing you business. This is all bullshit that would have left anyway.
Yeah.
It's an energetic cost for you to elevate and lift your frequency.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's an investment into yourself. That's a cost. People want to create this money manifestation bullshit. It's not about that. Live in your purpose and everything will attract to you.
Yep.
You don't need to chase it. You don't need to be a billionaire to make an impact.
Yep. Oh
Mother
yeah.
Teresa was not a billionaire. Gandhi was not a billionaire.
Hmm.
All these people were not billionaires. Didn't matter.
Yep.
So many billionaires have died and nobody gives a shit. The Queen of England died, what, 3 months ago? Nobody even cares anymore. Like, I
Yep.
mean, this is the reality of the world we live in. We
Yep.
create these echelons of, I need to be at this level, but it doesn't really friggin' matter.
Yeah. That's
It
true.
doesn't matter.
It's interesting because going back to kind of something that we were talking about in the beginning, you've obviously built like multi-million dollar companies and lost it and all these type of things. And what's interesting is you and I were talking about something, I think it was a couple weeks ago, about how so many people are trying to go macro when
Mhm.
really it starts with the micro interactions, right? Like you need to go micro to go macro. And what was really interesting to me is, and I guess this is where for me I have a lot of discernment and I'm able to sort kind of like the people that I spend time with and like who I'm taking information from. But one of the common themes that I've noticed from a lot of mentors and people that I've spent time with is they talk a lot about this idea of doing things that aren't necessarily scalable, but they become scalable in the long term. Like having conversations and building
Mhm.
relationships and doing all these type of things. People tell you not to do it because it takes too long. But I feel like more than anything, one of the things that I saw all the time from my finance career was people made a ton of money, but they didn't keep any of it. Right.
Right.
And it's like that's kind of how a lot of people's like businesses. It's like, oh, you
Mhm.
have these like roller coaster type things, and it's because you don't have the foundation and you don't have relationships
Right.
that are
Equate that to your
sustainable.
LinkedIn network. Look at it the exact same way. People make all these connections, but they don't make real connections, so it fades. Doesn't
Mm,
matter.
yep.
You have the largest network in the world, but if you're not connecting with it, it means nothing.
Yep.
The reason Gary Vee has such an influence is because Gary Vee invests into his following. He
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
consider it followers. He considers it his focus group on how to treat people. And he lives into it every day for the world to see.
Yeah.
That's not easy. That's really not easy.
Yeah.
That's a full-time commitment. That's a full-time job in itself.
Yep.
Like, I mean, but he went all in on it. When
Hmm.
nobody was paying attention to him, he went all in. He reached out to people directly when people were responding to his Twitter comments. He would reach out to them directly and make these direct communications.
Yeah.
Every contact I make in my LinkedIn account, I request a phone call.
Yeah.
If you want to speak, let me know. Do you want my calendar link or my cell phone? Ironically, both are sitting on my profile.
Yeah.
Both are sitting on my profile. They've been there for a decade. I mean, numbers changed a couple times, but it's always been there. It's for public consumption. I don't hide. I don't hide.
Yeah.
People just don't call. I don't care. It's not up to me. I can't make somebody pick up the damn phone. But
Yeah.
I want real connection. I want real relationships. I want real potential of creating amazing, beautiful experiences for others and for
Yep.
myself. Because the more I create for somebody else, the more I'm creating for myself as well.
Yeah.
I can't create a beautiful experience for somebody else without having that beautiful experience myself.
Yeah.
It's the most self-fulfilling, amazing thing in the whole planet, in all of existence. When you spread that much love into every situation you're involved in, it amplifies tenfold.
Yeah.
Authenticity is the equalizer.
Hmm.
You can be the biggest speaker on the planet, but if you take somebody who's an unknown and they go authentic with their story, they're going to knock the socks off the biggest speaker on the planet
Oh yeah.
because their authenticity carries past it.
Yep.
And then there's fear and insecurities why they get held back and pushed down
Yeah. It's
because
it, it's so powerful. I mean, you and I can talk all the time, but I want to be respectful because I know it's almost time for you to go to bed.
yeah, it's almost bedtime for me actually, ironically.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because so many people want to be like speakers and do all these type of things, and they will always ask me because I've done it so many times, and I always share with them like the one thing that I wish that I knew before I became a speaker was like you have to be vulnerable, because if you're not, you will lose people faster than
Hmm.
I mean the I could make up like so many different analogies,
It's
but
all
like
about authenticity.
it
That's all
really
it is.
is. Yeah.
You could have the
And
most boring story in the world. You could work at McDonald's doing fries, but if you are authentic and passionate about it, it's more powerful than the guy who built $1 trillion company, because
yeah.
it doesn't matter, because it's
Yep.
real, it's you, and that's what people align with.
Yeah.
But so many people want to be speakers to build a following,
Mm,
to create
yep.
to in the name of creating value for others, they want to increase their value.
Mm,
They're not doing it for the right reasons.
yeah, for sure. That's always an interesting conversation that I have with a lot of people because for me, I've had to learn that like there's such a fine line between helping people versus enabling them, and like I don't know if boundary would be the word, but I definitely like, and I'm sure you can relate to some extent of like sometimes you have to draw a line. Like, okay, this is
I don't.
maybe not. Oh well,
I'm infinite. I don't draw lines.
yeah,
I
it's
don't. You know what? People remove themselves, Paul. I'm not worried about
yeah,
it. I don't
yeah,
play that game. I am unconditional.
mm,
Do you under look up what unconditional means? Because we're taught very different than what unconditional really means.
yeah,
Unconditional love in this world today is truly conditional love.
mm,
It's just mislabeled,
yeah,
because everything has conditions. I unconditionally love everyone
yeah,
because I unconditionally love myself. I'll take people exactly who they are. I don't judge them. I don't care. It don't matter to me. They can attempt to drain me. It's completely impossible.
mm,
I'm limitless. It doesn't matter.
yeah. I mean, this has been an incredible conversation. I'm sure you and I will have hundreds of these conversations, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. It's been a great conversation. I love that you're like me in the sense that you're not a yes man. Sometimes like you call me out on my stuff, and I do the same, for you on some things, like if I don't align or if I want clarification. And I love that we have the open conversation, because at the end of the day it's really about this idea of curiosity, right? And just trying to understand like, oh, what is it that makes you think that way? Why do you have this perspective? Maybe what do you know that I kind of don't know, type of thing. And I find that for me, it's been really easy for me to take the back seat just because I love learning and listening. And I find that there was a saying that my mentor would share with me, and she said that the questions that you ask are more valuable than anything that you can share, because it really gets people to think like, oh, I never thought about that before. And I feel like that's what happens a lot when you and I have these like spirituality conversations,
Mhm.
because I don't really see it in that light, but it's been so powerful, and I'm just so grateful to have you in my network and for being here. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. Any final words or anything that you want to share? And Ken says that he can listen to us all night, but Ken, unfortunately, this is coming to an end because
It's almost my bedtime, Ken. I
yeah.
gotta go, bud. Like it's getting late here. I mean, it's been dark for hours now. Time changed, so I gotta go to bed within the next hour. No, I mean, I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be able to share my words and share my experience. And if it inspires one person, I just crushed my goals. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, that's the only goal I have at all, is to impact one soul a day. And the good news is, if I impact my own, I still win. And
yeah,
that's it, because I impact my own every day. So
yeah.
I keep it simple.
Yeah, you taught me that, because those were my two non-negotiables, was learn something new and help at least one person a day. And I remember that was really the thing that you and I aligned of, was like the only number that we care about is one. Like I don't care
Mhm.
about my following, I don't care about the reactions and impressions and all these type of things. It's all about impact, and
Yeah.
this show has been an incredible gift for me. I've gotten to meet so many incredible people through it, and so grateful to have you here on this one. And you have your Intua Talks event
Yeah,
tomorrow, right? Is it at
tomorrow
8?
night. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock. The name is Authentic Soul Conversations now.
Oh, you changed it.
Yeah, it's Authentic Soul Conversations. It's a little bit of a shift. Same topic, just a little bit of shift of how I want to word it. I feel more
Yeah.
comfortable using Authentic Soul Conversations.
Yeah, so that'll be a fun room. If any of you haven't come to that room, you definitely, well, you don't have to, but I would highly suggest to check it out. It's my favorite audio
Check
event.
out the room, bring
Yeah.
snacks, and make sure you're heavily fluided and you're able to get to a bathroom easily because you're going to be there for hours. It usually goes on for at least 3 hours.
Yeah, but well, anyways, so great to see you, my soul brother. Thank you so much
You
for your
too, my friend.
time, for your insight, and I'll see you tomorrow on your Authentic Soul Conversations. And thank you for giving us an authentic soul conversation tonight. So have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and
Thank you, everyone.
we will see you later.